Here's 5 things businesses need to do right now to stay on top of alert level changes and inspire confidence with customers. These are the 5 things I'll go through in the next 10 minutes. First, we're going to talk about claiming your business listings and the importance of that. We're going to talk about the importance of hours. We're going to talk about relevant attributes and how those affect how your business shows up and how people find your business. We'll talk about adding pictures and visual imagery. And then finally, we'll talk about communicating consistently. First thing to do is to make sure that you have claimed your business on the highest visibility platforms. So in the order of importance, in my opinion here, we have the 4 things that you ought to be thinking about. The first one, of course, is Google Maps and search. That will be almost universally is going to be the highest exposure point for business information about your business. So you want to make sure that you have claimed your GMB listing. Second, then you want to look at Apple Maps. Apple has put a lot of effort into improving how maps work, and they've added a whole bunch of different features to allow people to claim their listings and update stuff. So while you're at it doing Google Maps, you want to make sure that you're also thinking about Apple Maps. And then, of course, you want to make sure that you're looking at other platforms like Facebook and TripAdvisor that are important to your business. So in each of those cases, the process for making sure that your business is claimed is going to be different. Sometimes it's easier rather than harder. So in the Google one, you can claim your business right from your listing. Facebook, most of you already have, I imagine, already claimed, but you can do that from the page, the place page that you have about your business. TripAdvisor has a page for it. And then, of course, Apple Maps, you have to go through the Maps Connect link on the web in order to claim that business. So those are all things that you want to make sure that you are doing. And all the rest of the things that we're going to talk about are really going to apply to all of these platforms. Number 2 most important thing to do is to update your hours, even if they haven't changed. And I'll tell you why in just a minute. But this is really the most important thing, particularly as we have lockdowns in different parts of the world kind of opening up and shutting things down and then reopening. Hours are really the one of the key things that people use as a decision maker to decide whether or not they're going to come into your business. So you want to make sure that you're keeping your hours up to date and that you're doing that even if your hours aren't any different from day to day. Here's the reason to do that. In Google My Business, for instance, and in some of these other platforms, there will be the hours, when you have your hours updates will affect whether or not people can see the business or where they see that. But particularly in Google My Business, you'll notice that this showed up a couple of months ago, this text underneath here. So it says whether or not the business is open, it says when it closes, and then it actually says underneath there, updated by business 5 days ago. And that's a really critical piece of information. So Google My Business is not only tracking the last time that you updated your hours, but it's reporting that to businesses. So as we enter and exit lockdowns, this is a really critical thing. I know personally, I'm not going to go to a business, after a lockdown or when things open up again, unless I can see very clearly and explicitly that those hours have been updated recently, because then I know that they're going to be correct and I'm not going to go down there and have them be closed or something else. So even if your hours aren't any different, you want to go in, maybe make a change something by half an hour, change it back, because you want that message that says updated by the business 5 days ago. Basically, the recency and the confidence, and this will be clear when we talk about some of these other items, the recency and confidence are really critical. And if it's not immediately clear that your business is open and that things are happening normally, people are going to choose somewhere else. Number 3 then is to look for relevant attributes. Here again in Google My Business, one of the examples, so there's a lot of attributes in there, and this is different for different types of businesses. The ones that are highlighted here happen to be restaurants, but there are attributes for all kinds of different businesses. But as an example, so this has an attribute for dine in or takeaway here. And of course, there's a button there's a prompt in Google Maps that says takeaway. And the important thing to remember here is that if you have takeaway and you haven't ticked that box, then you're not going to show up in that search. So that's a really critical one to make sure that you've taken advantage of all of those. That is also true for Facebook. So Facebook has recently added some services and updates options, which kind of fall into that same category as attributes. And this will be true of other platforms as well, including TripAdvisor. So you want to make sure that you're taking a look at that maybe once a month on each of these platforms, just making sure that you have ticked all of the boxes, quite literally in this case here, you've ticked all of the boxes to indicate the things that you do and that you don't have, so that when someone does a search for a business that does delivery, that does pickup, or does any other kind of takeaway or online service, that your business is going to show up for that. Number 4 then is to add fresh pictures, and we want to do this at least monthly. So you can see here in this little example that these are photos that are from 1 day ago, these are from a week ago, and these are from 3 weeks ago. Those are all photos that were added by the owner of that listing, and that's a really important thing to do, is to make sure that you are adding photos and that you're adding recent photos and that you have a plan to do that on a regular basis. So why do we do that? So here's one of the important reasons, which is businesses with more than 100 images, and this is from a Bright Local study that looks at search engine optimization and exposure for businesses and all kinds of stuff. So businesses with more than 100 images get higher exposure rates. And that's a really significantly higher exposure rate. That's almost 3 times the exposure rate of businesses with less than 100 photos. So that difference, that significant difference there, is suggesting that the photo volume and subsequently the frequency, which I'll talk about in a minute, is a really important ranking signal in all of these different platforms as to whether or not your business shows up. So there's some really compelling reasons to take photos, not the least of which is that people are expecting, they want to be able to see what things look like right now. So recency is really important, kind of that immediacy of things. People want to know, what does the business look like right now? Is it operating the way that I think it's that I think, or that I remember, or that I want it to be operating? And they want to be reassured. And that's really what you need to think about, is consumer confidence, reassurance, and the recency of that information. Now, I can tell you, at least as it relates to Google Maps and Google My Business, from our own experience managing about 150 of these listings directly, that adding 4 to 5 photos a month is good for a 10 to 30% lift in exposures for the business. And again, that's because it appears that the frequency and the volume of photos that are being added to a listing is a really strong ranking signal that that business is being maintained and is being managed, and so therefore is a more reliable result. So obviously your mileage may vary, but there's some really good reasons to make sure that you have 4 or 5 photos that you're taking and you're posting those each month to increase your exposure and to reassure your customers. Number 5 then is about communicating consistently. These are a couple of examples of posts across 2 different platforms, across Google My Business and of course Facebook. And there's lots of opportunities in all of these. You just want to make sure that you are consistently, and that means both consistently in terms of messaging, but also consistently in terms of the frequency. So you don't want to do a post once a month and just sort of randomly do it. You really want to be able to do something that is more consistent. If that's once a week for you, then that's fine. Or if it's more frequent, then that's fine too. You just want to make sure that you have a plan and that you are communicating consistently and repeatedly across these different platforms. So Google Posts, one really good way to do that. Google Posts are completely free. It's one of the only things in Google's platform that kind of has that level of freedom. It's free to do. You can put tracking links on it. One of the only places you can do that without paying for it. It takes up a lot of screen real estate in your knowledge panel. So that's what's happening here. If we look over here, the business listing about your business, or the knowledge panel about your business, has a little block in it that has the posts in it. And the post can have a photo and some text, and can actually have a click-through button that goes to wherever you want them to go. One quick note on this is, it used to be, up until just a couple of weeks ago, posts were limited to 7 days. So you had to go in every 7 days and update your post, and that no longer appears to be the case. So Google's actually playing around with the time frame that those posts appear. So it's a really good time to go back and check the posts that maybe you already have had, but also to make sure that you are using new posts and that you're kind of paying attention to the information that is being communicated there. You can use the same information. You are encouraged to use the same information across multiple platforms. So whatever it is that we're talking about here, maybe it's a new product, it's a new service, it's just an update, could be any kind of information that you're communicating. You want to make sure that you're doing that here in Google Posts, because that's free. And then you also, of course, want to do that in Facebook. As of right now, TripAdvisor and Apple Maps don't really have a way to do that, so you don't really need to worry about it there, but there might be other platforms. Maybe Instagram is a good place, or other places that resonate with your customers where you want to communicate that same information. You'll also notice, if you have been playing around with Facebook, that there's some additional types of posts, and so there's a COVID-19 update. Google actually has that too. Those types of posts are definitely worth considering, particularly if you have something that is relevant relevant to that. They're generally not as visual, but they do have placement that is higher on the page, and they tend to get displayed more than other types of posts. So a couple of different examples there of posts for communicating information about your business. And that is it. In less than 10 minutes, 5 things your business needs to do right now to stay on top of communicating to your customers.